Welcome to Shredder Fanfic. Like, subscribe, and hype video. Join members to gain early access to new videos.
The main character, after dying in his previous life, he wakes up inside of Dawn of the Dead, and he wakes up as a Grim Reaper from Resident Evil.
Dawn of the Dead. What if I am Agent H.U.NK? Chapter 1. Cold Steel in Warm Flesh. The pavement was wet when I died. I remember that clearly. Asphalt soaked with a winter drizzle, headlights cutting through the mist, and the reflection of a chrome grille a second before it crushed my chest. No fear, no scream, just instinct, then black. When I woke up, I was kneeling behind a rooftop HVAC unit, my back pressed against cold metal. The weight of a tactical rig hugged my chest. The distinct pressure of a gas mask sealed against my skin. My fingers flexed automatically, gloved, steady, clean. I knew the stance, the posture. I didn't need a mirror to know who I was. H.U.NK human unit never killed. The Grim Reaper of the Umbrella Security Service. And the world was already ending. Beneath the rooftop, I heard chaos. Screams, raw, bloody, full of the kind of fear people only feel when the structure of their world disintegrates. I didn't need to see them to know the type. Panicked civilians, disorganized cops, broken lines of communication. Standard urban collapse scenario. But the stench told me what I needed to confirm. Rot, copper, feces. The early stages of mass casualty decomposition. There were already too many bodies to bury. My hands moved on muscle memory. Check sidearm, Heckler & Koch USB match, modified trigger, internal suppressor. Loaded, safety off. Counted 16 rounds, confirmed full mag. Primary MP5K, collapsible stock, foregrip mount, reflex sight. Slung, check. Combat knife strapped to chest, MOLLE. Radio silent. No signal, of course. I was alone, just like always. The armor wasn't standard military. This was high-end agency issue. Lightweight carbon fiber plates, reinforced Kevlar weave. Custom. Movement was fluid. No pain, no injuries, breathing steady. I didn't question how I got here. I was here. That was enough. I moved. Down the rooftop stairwell, boots silent on concrete. Standard breaching protocol. Sweep corners, no wasted movement. The stairwell stank of urine and blood. Someone had died here. Recently. Blood pooled on the fourth step down. Arterial spray across the wall. A smear where a body was dragged. I didn't stop. I didn't check for survivors. There weren't any. Second floor, door halfway open. I positioned right, gun raised, checked the room, standard apartment. Kitchenette, overturned furniture, TV cracked on the ground, no movement. I moved inside. Room cleared in 8 seconds. That's when I heard the growl. I turned. She was already on me. Mid-30s, white female missing half her lower jaw. Blood thick around her chin, matted in what remained of her blonde hair. Eyes blank, no intelligence, just hunger. She moved fast, more than I expected, but not fast enough. One shot, clean between the eyes. Skull cracked, brain destroyed. She dropped, twitching, then nothing. I exhaled once. Target down. This wasn't Raccoon City, but it didn't matter. The rules were the same. Infection vector, civilian population, lack of containment. Early stage outbreak already too widespread. The difference now, no umbrella, no support, just the end of the world and one operator. I stepped over the corpse. There was movement outside the window. I approached, staying low. Outside, street-level chaos. Dozens of them, undead, wandering aimlessly, some feasting, others just walking. Vehicles crashed, emergency lights still spinning. No police cordon, no riot control. It was too late. I tapped the earpiece again. Static, no command net, no fallback coordinates. I was off the grid, fully severed. It didn't matter. H.U.NK never needed orders. The mission now was simple. Survive, escape, neutralize threats. I found a backpack in the apartment, civilian make. Loaded it with water bottles, canned food, a flashlight, a half-used box of 9 rounds. Left the rest. I moved on. The streets were a war zone, no organized resistance. Fires spread unchecked. Alarms screamed from looted shops. A gas station across the block was burning, thick smoke rising into a sky already choked with ash and dust. I avoided the main street, too exposed, took the alleyways. In the distance I heard a helicopter. Low rotor thump, military probably, not local PD, too far to track. I didn't go toward it. It wouldn't matter. Evac wouldn't hold. It never did. I found a manhole cover 3 blocks west. Underground access. Better than rooftops. I pulled the hook from my belt, lifted it clean, dropped in. The ladder was rusted. I descended fast. Sewer systems in cities like this were old, unmapped in places, but better than open streets. Fewer infected. Quieter. I kept the flashlight low, cone narrow. The tunnels echoed. Every drip sounded like a gunshot. I heard them before I saw them. Wet footsteps, shuffling, groaning. They were down here too. I pulled the knife. Silent kills only. First one came around the corner, young male, infected. Skin pale, blood dried around his eyes. I stepped forward, drove the knife through his eye socket into the brainstem. He dropped without a sound. 2 more, I waited, let them close the distance. First, throat slit, blade horizontal. Second, stab through the chin up into the skull. Fast, efficient, no hesitation. I kept moving. Half an hour later, I found a utility room. Sealed door, metal reinforced. Locked but not electronic. I picked it. Inside, dark. I swept with the flashlight. No infected. Just shelves, tools, supplies, rations. Better. I locked the door behind me, sat in the corner, checked ammo, cleaned the knife, refilled mags. Then I rested, 15 minutes, no more. The second day came slower. The infection had spread too far, the city was lost. But the way they moved, the way the infected acted, it wasn't the T-virus. It was Las Plagas either. This was something different. Slower, simpler, purely neurological damage. Viral, not engineered. I remembered the films. Dawn of the Dead. This wasn't a simulation. It was the real thing. No SDARS, no nemesis. Just one man in a decaying city. Good. I worked better alone. My next move was tactical. Find a supply route. Transportation. A base of operations. I moved toward the train lines. They were silent, overgrown in places, bodies littered along the edges. But one of the stations had power. Emergency generators kicked in. Lights flickered. I breached the entry quietly. Inside, survivors. They were armed, nervous, untrained. 2 men raised rifles, old AR-15s. One woman stood behind them, clutching a pipe. "Who the hell are you?" one of them asked. I didn't answer. They hesitated. I stepped forward, controlled pace, gun lowered but ready. "Ex-military?" the woman asked. I kept walking. One of the men aimed. I stopped. "Drop it," he said. I raised my weapon. Headshot. He dropped. Second man flinched, fired wide. I moved left, closed distance, hit him with the butt of my rifle. He crumpled. The woman froze. I stood over her. "Don't," I said. She dropped the pipe. "Please, we didn't know who you were." He was scared. I didn't reply. I checked their gear. Some food, little ammo, no medicine. I took what was useful, left them the rest. "Are you going to kill me?" she asked. No. I walked out. She wouldn't last 2 days, but that wasn't my problem. By the 4th day, I had maps of the city, a working radio, and a confirmed safe house. 3rd floor of a police precinct, reinforced windows, independent generator. I made contact with a small National Guard team. 5 men, trained, holding position at the outskirts. They didn't ask questions. "Codename," the squad leader asked over the radio. "H.U.NK. Silence. Then understood, uploading coordinates. They were pulling out, last evac, one chance. I didn't rush. I arrived 7 hours later, 2 of their men were already dead. Infected breach. They held the gate long enough to see me coming. "Are you alone?" the squad leader asked. "Yes." He didn't ask more. Together we cleared the perimeter. I took point. Tight formations, clean shots, standard sweep, no wasted ammo. They respected efficiency. When the Black Hawk came, we loaded fast. I didn't sit. The pilot glanced back. "You one of the SDARS guys?" "No." He didn't press it. As we lifted, I looked down at the city. Fires still burned. Undead still moved. It wasn't over. It would never be over. But I was alive. I always was. Chapter 2. Standard Operating Collapse. The helicopter set down just outside a gutted elementary school north of Reading. The parking lot was cleared, coned off with barbed wire and torched husks of pickup trucks. Signs spray-painted on concrete, quarantine and no entry, infected inside. They were old, faded. I ignored them. The National Guard squad disembarked quickly. 5 men total, including the pilot who stayed with the chopper. I watched their spacing, their trigger discipline, their communication. No wasted motion, but tension hung off them. They moved like soldiers, but not like survivors. I was the only one here with experience in both. Sergeant Alex Trent was their lead. Early 30s. Scar above his left eye, spoke in short bursts. He nodded toward the door they'd fortified with sheet metal and desk legs. "This is our new base, temporarily." I didn't respond. Trent looked over his shoulder at the others. One man, Rodriguez, was rechecking the perimeter. He had a burn scar from chin to collarbone. Another, Miller, was younger, slower on reloads. There was anxiety in his hands. I noticed everything. Trent motioned me inside. "We've got the second floor cleared. Showers, some stored food, our medics dead. Bit last night." I entered without comment. The others gave me a wide berth. They didn't know me, but they knew what I was. Tactical gear, custom mask, silent steps. They filled in the blanks. One of them muttered behind me. "Looks like umbrella." Trent didn't correct him. The hallway smelled like bleach and mold. Kids' drawings still lined the walls, stick figures and blue skies. It was absurd. I walked past without slowing. Upstairs, Trent showed me the gear room. Ammo, armor, ration crates. Their real supply was thin. Half their magazines were half-loaded. Not enough iodine. One working radio. "We've got a resupply run planned. South side. CVS and a bait shop. Might be a few civvies still holed up there too." He paused. "You're welcome to stay, if you don't cause problems." I turned toward him. "I don't cause problems, I solve them." That was the end of the conversation. I took the far room, corner-facing window, good visibility, one door easily barricaded, took a cot from the nurse's office, set up weapons on a plastic reading table meant for children. I stripped down and cleaned each firearm, field maintained the MP5, oiled the knife, checked every pouch twice, memorized the layout of the building. They let me work. First op with them was 48 hours later. Morning. Grey sky, low cloud cover, no wind. Rodriguez manned the .50 cal truck mount. The rest of us were split between the Humvee and a modified SWAT van they'd salvaged from downtown. I rode in the back. No one talked. That was better. When we hit the south side, I saw how bad it had gotten. The infected were changing. Not in speed, not in strength, but in pattern, clustering in pockets, some standing in place for hours, some walking circles around burned-out cars. No vocalizations unless provoked. I filed it away. Could be a shift in neural decay rate. Could be environmental fatigue. Didn't matter. Still killed the same. The CVS was already looted. We swept it anyway. One civilian corpse behind the pharmacy counter. Looked recent. Bullet to the head. Maybe suicide. Maybe not. Miller froze when he saw it. Rookie. God, he was. He was just. "Move," I said. He didn't argue. Rodriguez found antibiotics. Trent packed up painkillers. We didn't waste time. The bait shop was next. Smaller, more isolated. 2 outbuildings in back, 1 metal shed. I took point. Front door was chained. I kicked it open. Inside, blood, not fresh. Drag marks leading to the cooler. Flies. The smell was bad. I motioned to the others. We cleared room by room. I took the rear. When I opened the cooler, 3 infected lunged out. Close quarters, I dropped one with a throat shot. Second, kicked its knee out, stabbed the base of the skull. Third, grabbed my vest, teeth snapping an inch from my mask. I twisted its head, full force. Neck snapped. Skull hit the floor with a wet crack. Trent stepped in behind me. Clear. I nodded. Miller came in last. He stared at the corpses. "You're not even shaken," he muttered. "No." He looked at me like I was an alien. I didn't care. We took jerky, bottled water, 2 fishing knives. On the way out, Trent stopped me. "You're surgical," he said. "I've seen SOCOM guys panic. You don't even blink." "I complete the mission." "That all?" "That's enough." He didn't ask more. Back at the school, morale was up. A good run, no losses. They cooked over a barrel fire in the courtyard, canned beans and instant potatoes. I didn't sit with them, but I ate. Fuel was fuel. Rodriguez brought me a folding chair. "Don't take this the wrong way, but what the hell were you before all this?" "Classified." He chuckled. "Sure, I figured." Then he sat across from me. "You think this city can be saved?" "No." "What about Philly?" "No." "What then?" "Clean zones, hard borders, manual sweeps, burn the rest." He nodded slowly. "That's what I figured." Silence. Then, still, "It's good to have you around. Guys feel better knowing someone like you's on our side." I didn't answer. Day 5. A flare went up over I-78. Blue smoke. We were in the armory, checking gear. Trent looked out the window, cursed. "That's the evac marker. Wasn't scheduled for another 2 weeks." Miller paced. "They'll leave without us." "They always do," I said. Trent turned to me. "You want a seat on that bird, you need to help us get there. We don't know what the road looks like. Could be blocked, could be worse." "I'll get you through." Simple mission. Escort, secure evac, unknown contact resistance. I packed light. MP5, 3 mags, knife, radio, 1 med kit, 1 water flask. The Humvee wouldn't make it. Fuel was too low. We took the SWAT van. I drove. Trent navigated. Miller sat passenger. Rodriguez and another Homan manned the rear. We moved fast. I kept to side roads, avoided overpasses, didn't stop. Saw one family in a station wagon, broken axle, waving us down. We didn't stop. Halfway there, roadblock, burned out buses, corpses nailed to the walls, crude graffiti, turn back. I parked, checked sightlines, motioned for silent breach. We moved in 3-man wedge. I took left flank, saw them before they saw me. Survivors, armed, 6 of them. Militia type, no uniforms, patchwork gear, homemade suppressors, dirty. They saw us, didn't shoot. One raised a hand. "You boys heading to the evac?" Trent stepped forward. "Yeah." "You're wasting your time. They're not taking anyone, only government badges." Trent hesitated. I moved forward. "We're government." They laughed. "You don't look it." I shot the one who spoke, clean through the jaw. The others scattered. One drew too slow. I shot his leg, moved in, finished him. Trent shouted, "Hold fire." I didn't listen. 2 more down. The last one dropped his weapon. Trent yelled again, "We surrender, we surrender." He looked at me. "I'm not." I shot the last one. Trent was pale. We could have negotiated. No, we couldn't. He didn't argue again. We reached the evac point at 19:30 hours. Chinook rotors loud against the valley. Perimeter guarded by MPs, 5-ton trucks, sandbag nests, 50 civilians in a holding pen. One of the officers approached as we dismounted. You have clearance. Trent handed over the radio logs. Confirmed orders. We're all that's left of Fireteam Sierra. The MP glanced at me. Who's he? H.U.NK. That was all. The MP nodded slowly. I've heard that name. I walked past him. Inside the evac zone, order, triage units, food lines, ammo crates stacked by squad markings. But I could see the panic in their eyes. No one believed they were safe. They weren't. I turned to Trent. This is your extraction. You're not coming. No. His brow furrowed. We could use you. I know. I stepped back. This zone will fall in 72 hours. Too many civilians, not enough security. You're sure? I'm never wrong. He looked away. You're a cold bastard. Correct. We shook hands. Then I disappeared. 3 days later, I watched the evac base burn from a nearby ridge. Infected overran it at dawn. Someone let them in. Panic, screaming, friendly fire. Trent's body wasn't recovered. I marked the coordinates. Then I moved on. Chapter 3, Sweep and Burn Doctrine. The infected aren't clever. They don't learn. They don't organize. That's what makes them predictable. And predictable enemies die. After the reading evac collapsed, I moved northwest. Appalachian edge, small towns, low population density, easier to contain, easier to kill. Urban centers were already overrun. Philadelphia, Allentown, Harrisburg, all gone. Rural zones offered something the cities couldn't, choke points. I followed the interstate for a day, then broke off toward a farm road near a collapsed overpass. There was no traffic anymore, no lights in the distance, no civilian chatter over shortwave. Just the dead. My plan was simple. Identify infected movement patterns. Control flow of bodies through engineered pathways. Set up hard barriers and kill zones. Sweep, burn, repeat. No backup, no comms, no survivors left to impress, just me. Perfect conditions. By day one, I'd cleared an old lumber yard in Pine Hill. Chain link fences were already in place, partially collapsed in the rear, but the front was solid. The office had 2 floors, plywood reinforced windows, and solar panels scavenged from a nearby house. I took what I needed, reinforced the fences, secured all blind spots with mirror angles and cans on tripwires. My mask's air filters were holding, but I still rechecked their seals nightly. I spent that first day scouting. 2 infected in the garage, 4 outside by the sheds. One had its foot caught in barbed wire, gnawing at the air like it didn't care. They didn't smell me through the mask. I moved fast. The MP5 wasn't ideal for long-term use. Too many moving parts. I stashed it. Instead, I switched to close-quarters stealth. Knife, hatchet, breacher's hammer. Daylight engagements only. No point in taking risks. The infected dropped easy when you knew the angles. Base of the skull, spine, stem, optic cavity to motor control. All kills were clean, no blood on the suit, no noise. Once the yard was clear, I blocked the gate with an overturned tractor and reinforced it with cement bags from the warehouse. Safe zone established. On day 2, I began pattern tracking. Using elevation and landmarks, I triangulated the infected drift routes. It was basic movement theory. They didn't have plans. They followed sound, heat, blood, or nothing, so they wandered, and wandering meant paths. They passed through old dirt roads, utility trails, animal tracks. I marked the most traveled ones with rusted paint cans and motion sensors. Every night, I'd sit on the roof with binoculars, taking notes on a spiral notepad I found in the office. March rate, 0.6 mph. Group size, typically 410. Clustering interval, every 3.5 hours. No outliers. By end of day 3, I had a map of undead flow between 4 townships. It looked like water, trickling down predictable terrain. And water could be damned. Day 4, I began construction. I scouted a mountain pass leading from Bell Run into the larger valley basin. There was a natural funnel between 2 collapsed bridges, a 2-lane asphalt path surrounded by cliff rock on both sides. Only one way in, only one way out. I laid the first trap there. Wire netting stretched between trees, old propane tanks rigged with timed fuses, claymores mounted behind garbage piles. I found an old school bus halfway down the slope. I rolled it into position, popped the tires, and filled the inside with flammable debris. The corridor was sealed. I named it Zone A. That night, I waited. At 2200 hours, they came. 7 infected, slow shuffle, drawn by the bait, an old car battery wired to a broken air horn I'd planted earlier. They stepped into the kill zone. I waited until all 7 were past the line. Then I triggered the tanks. Fire bloomed across the choke. 2 claymores detonated. 5 fell instantly. The last 2 burned as they staggered into the net. I approached once the flames died. 2 twitching bodies. I ended them with the hammer. Zone A cleared. Day 6, I expanded operations. Zone B was a ridgeline curve near a sawmill, too exposed for explosives, so I went old school. Pits, 4 of them, 3 meters deep, camouflaged with rotted plywood and leaves, lined the bottom with rebar I'd stripped from collapsed buildings. Baited them with meat from a dead raccoon. Infected don't feel pain, but they get stuck. Once they fall, they can't climb out. I checked the pits every 6 hours. Caught 11 in 2 days. None made a sound. I doused them with gasoline and burned them inside the holes. No bullets wasted. Zone B controlled. By day 10, infected movement had dropped by 23% across the southern access points. I knew because I tracked it, every hour, every vector. They were being redirected, slowed, killed, pushed into kill zones. It was working. This wasn't defense. It was extermination. I began recording kills. Not for memory, for data. Kill logs, GPS coordinates, body conditions, movement speeds, decay rate. My notebook filled up with diagrams and entries. I knew how many I killed, 143 in the first week. Not one injury. The body I inhabited, this wasn't a man, it was a system. It responded to threats like a machine. No fatigue, no hesitation, no anger, just action. Every breath measured. Every shot placed. Every movement efficient. I operated in 20-hour rotations, 4 hours rest. Food was routine, 1 ration every 12 hours, hydration constant. I burned more calories than I replaced, but I'd stabilized the moment I took a clean supply dump. Still 1 town left untouched, Glenville. Too many unknowns. I waited. Day 12. I found a survivor. He tripped a can line on the east perimeter at 300. Young, civilian, maybe 16, carrying a baseball bat and a hiking pack. I caught him before he reached the fences. He froze when he saw me. You Jesus, what? Are you military? No. What are you then? Efficient. He held his hands up. I'm just trying to find my sister. We got separated near the Rite Aid back in Oak Hollow. Please, I'm not infected. Proof. He rolled up his sleeves, lifted his shirt, showed clean skin, no bite marks, no wounds. I scanned his eyes, no dilation, breathing steady. He was telling the truth. I lowered my weapon. He exhaled like I'd spared him from execution. You have food? Yes. Water? Yes. I opened the gate. He stepped inside slowly. This is real. You did all this? Yes. You did this alone? Yes. He looked around in silence, then again at me. What are you? I stared at him behind the mask. Not your concern. He stayed 3 nights. Didn't ask questions again. On the 4th day, I gave him a map. Your sister's last location, based on infected drift. She moved west. No groups reported traveling east from Oak Hollow. He took it like a lifeline. You're not coming. No. You could help. I have a mission. He left at dawn. Didn't say goodbye. Day 15, I expanded west. Zone C was a narrow river crossing over a broken dam. Infected had been using it as a migration route. Slower ones washed into the rocks, but enough made it through to overwhelm anything unfortified downstream. I collapsed the bridge, used deck cord from an old mine shack, wired support beams, triggered when 10 crossed. Concrete and bone hit the water. No bodies rose. Zone C closed. By day 21, I had 6 zones. A through F. Over 370 kills confirmed. No civilian losses. No breaches. No compromise. I kept the fence logs updated hourly. I recorded every trap reset. I lived by metrics. This wasn't survival anymore. This was a campaign. The infected were meat, and I was the knife. I found an old FEMA broadcast tower on day 25. Broken base, half-powered. I rewired it with solar backups and rerouted a shortwave feed through my mask's internal mic. One-way transmission, no location data. I used it once. Containment zone active. Central PA corridor, do not enter. Infected density decreasing. Perimeter operations in progress. No evacuation, no support. All survivors avoid entry. I signed it with one word. H.U.NK. That night, it rained. I sat in the tower, watching the water hit the dirt below. The infected don't mind rain. But I do. It smothers scent trails, masks footfalls, makes traps unreliable. So I waited. For once, I let the rain speak. It said I was winning. Chapter 4. Corridor Protocol initiated. The dead don't speak. But they move. And movement can be studied, broken, restructured. By day 28, I had logged 527 confirmed kills. 6 clean zones held, reinforced and functional. No breach. No survivor casualties. Drift patterns across the Appalachian corridor had been altered by more than 60%. It was time to escalate. Sweep and burn worked, but it wasn't sustainable. Not long-term. Not scalable. The infected would always return unless given somewhere else to go. And the few survivors still left, fragmented, scattered, walking into dead cities and firebombed suburbs, they needed structure. Not rescue, not aid, just lanes, control, predictable terrain. I began Corridor Protocol. This wasn't about killing anymore. This was about containment. Direction. Grid logic. Phase 1, connectivity. Zone A and Zone B were exactly 11 kilometers apart by straight line, but the terrain between them was staggered. 2 collapsed railways, 5 choked roads, and the corpse-flooded town of Hughes Crossing. Too dangerous to let movement flow uncontrolled. I mapped the path manually, step by step. Cleared cars off roads with a front loader from the lumber yard. Dismantled crash barriers. Laid down powder lime strips, white lines, visible even at night, forming a center path through the corridor. I sprayed arrows with orange traffic paint, old world supplies, road tools from dead city stores. I planted gas lanterns wired to motion sensor igniters. When someone walked by, the light flared. It told survivors they weren't hallucinating. It told infected nothing. They didn't react to heatless light. I set up one-way signage, do not stop. Follow the line, no fire, no voices. I didn't care who read it. If they followed, they lived. That was enough. At the center of the corridor was a 4-building rest point. 1 gas station, 2 garages, and an old church. Too exposed. I fortified it. I broke the stained glass windows, replaced them with reinforced plastic, piled tires and timber inside the nave, made bunk spaces from what was left of the pews, filled the altar with canned goods scavenged weeks ago. I left only one sign over the doorway. Hold point 1, rest 1 hour, move AT dawn. No names. No explanations. No lies. Just facts. The corridors weren't shelters. They were arteries, pumping movement in one direction only, west. Away from the flood zones, away from collapse. I didn't sleep for 48 hours. The setup took too long. I cleared a basement crawl space full of shrieking infected. Crawlers, old converts, emaciated, fast on hands and knees, bones scraping the stone like knives. Hard to hit, easy to crush. I used the breacher's hammer. No sound when I finished. I cleaned the blood off with bleach and fire. The smell lingered. I didn't care. I left chemical markers at the crawl entry. Burned sulfur and wax. Infected avoided strong acidic scents. Another lesson from Raccoon City. Umbrella taught me a lot before they died. Phase 2, surveillance. 2 deer cameras wired into external battery packs. Motion-based capture, triggered by any body heat over 32 degrees C. I mounted one outside Zone B's northern exit, one in the hill pass near Zone D. They weren't for the infected. They were for the living. I wanted to know who came through. 1 image every 30 seconds, stored on SD cards. I checked them nightly. On the 5th day, I got a hit. Female civilian, backpack, hoodie with blood on the sleeve, carrying a compound bow, walking the lime line between garages, face covered. She didn't see the camera. She moved fast. No hesitation. She followed the signs. At hold point 1, she stopped for exactly 58 minutes, drank water, ate something, then moved west, out of frame. I didn't make contact, but I noted the time. Survivor vector confirmed. Corridor works. Phase 3, expansion. I initiated link extension between zones D and E. This time, I didn't build alone. I used infected behavior. Lured them out of the hot path using noise generators, broken speakers rigged to battery packs, playing slowed-down train horns and static loops. Placed them along dead roads. The infected moved toward them slowly. I walked behind and cleared the stragglers with suppressed shots. I didn't need to kill all of them, just enough to break the group inertia. Like cattle. Break the herd, redirect movement. Zone D was a ridge camp, narrow road, elevation edge. I cleared 3 crashed vehicles and lit a path with scavenged chemical markers from a mining supply depot. Green glow half-life, 96 hours. Survivors would follow them at night. Once I linked Zone D to the rest, I re-evaluated supply flow. I had enough food and water for 12 individuals, to survive 7 days across 4 rest points if they rationed. But I didn't stock anything beyond that. Corridor Protocol was not a refugee pipeline. It was a filter. If you had discipline, you made it. If you didn't, you died. Just like everywhere else. Phase 4, Interruption Control. Human error destroys containment faster than virus mutation. 2 days later, I found a break in the pattern. Hold point 2 had been compromised. Blood on the walls, furniture overturned, a man's boot stuck in the doorway still laced. I counted 4 corpses, 1 survivor body, 3 infected, close-range kill signs, machete cuts, amateur. I reviewed camera footage. 2 males, late 20s, came in from south, didn't follow the lime line. 1 lit a fire, smoked a cigarette. 10 minutes later, the infected breached. They fought, lost. The survivor was stabbed in the neck by his own blade during the panic. His face was frozen in surprise. I dumped their bodies in the chemical pit behind the gas station, burned the whole hold point. Then I replaced it with a new one, 50 meters off. No furniture, no welcome. Just a locked door and 2 water jugs. I scrawled new signage in the ash of the old church wall. No fire, no noise, stay moving, don't die stupid. They wouldn't know it was me, but they'd know someone was watching. Day 40, corridor active. 4 clean rest points. 2 long stretches marked by lime and glow sticks. 75 kilometers of directional access. I logged 7 unique survivor vectors. None repeated, all moved west. I never made contact. Never showed my face. They passed through my system like blood through veins. Not everyone would make it, I accepted that. But now movement had structure. And structure meant control. I upgraded defenses. Built an elevated observation platform above Zone C, mounted a hunting rifle to a makeshift gun cradle, tripod stabilized, zeroed at 200 meters, not for mass killing. For surgical suppression. If a breach occurred, human or undead, I'd see it before it reached the next point. From that high point, I could see the lights of Glenville burning every 3rd night. Still too hot. Not yet. But soon. Day 43, a man came back. Middle-aged, short hair, burned jacket, had a limp. He walked into Zone A and sat in the middle of the road, right on the lime. No weapon, no pack. Just sat. I watched him from behind the fence. He didn't see me. He stayed there for an hour, looking around, silent. Then he stood and spoke to the open air. I know you're watching. I don't know who you are, but this corridor saved my daughter, so if you can hear me, thank you. Then he walked away, back the way he came. That night, I sharpened every blade I had. Corridor protocol continued without issue for 10 more days. Supply caches rotated, cameras repositioned. Zone a required minor fence repair after a buck slammed into the post and impaled itself. I used its meat to bait a kill pit near Zone F. The last corridor section was almost ready. It would stretch toward the base of Blue Mountain, high ground, natural bottleneck. Elevation made infection movements slow and predictable. I scouted a water tower to convert into final observation. Found 2 survivor corpses inside. They de-overdosed, probably painkillers. One held the other's hand. I didn't bury them. I just closed the hatch. Final task, establish fallback beacon. Inside the top of the tower, I wired an old police cruiser's siren to a rotating timer relay. 45 seconds on, then off for 3 minutes. Looped. It wasn't audible, more than 1 kilometer away. But it was enough. If I died, If the system failed, the survivors would still hear something. They'd follow the sound, and they'd reach the corridor. I returned to the lumber yard on day 54. I rechecked every entry, refilled water drums, cleaned every weapon. I logged the total. Corridor length, 97.2 km. Rest points, 5. Safe zones, 6. Camera coverage, 73%. Confirmed survivor passage, 19. Confirmed deaths inside corridor, 4. Confirmed infected killed by environmental means, 311. Direct kill count, 668. No contact. No glory. No orders. Just containment. Just survival. Just H.U.NK Chapter 5. Phase 2, Structure Without Mercy. Day 55. Corridor stability reached operational minimums. No breaches in over 9 days. No infected resurgence. No survivor deaths logged on camera. 4 of the 7 original routes between drift zones now choked with corpses too decayed to stand. Secondary decay slowed movement across northern ridges. Without intelligence, the infected fail to pathfind. That meant one thing. The system worked. It was time to evolve. Phase 1, Corridor Protocol, established basic survivability, movement over slaughter, direction over panic, a spine through central Pennsylvania, straight westward, away from collapse centers. But it wasn't permanent. Nothing was, until I made it so. I didn't want refugees anymore. I wanted operators. Civilians who made it through, people who proved they could listen, obey, survive. They earned structure. Phase 2 began before sunrise. Not with announcements, not with hope. With reinforcement. The first structural shift was water. Most corridor travelers were already weakened, underfed, sick, stumbling. I'd watched them on the motion footage, limping across the lime-lined roads, barely able to hold their packs. Clean water was harder than ammo. I'd seen corpses bloated from bacteria near drainage ditches. Seen survivors drink runoff from radiated culverts. So I dug wells. Not deep, not wide. Rain collectors with sand filters connected to storm drainage paths. The blueprints came from memory, military field manuals, contingency prep books, umbrellas, offsite hydration protocols. They worked in Indonesia. They worked in Bolivia. They worked here. I placed the first one in hold point 3, north side. I used salvaged guttering, mesh filters, UV clear tubing, and a half-purged iodine pack to clean the reserve tank. Flow rate, 3 gallons per hour, more than enough for 2 people a day. I painted the outside with red slashes and a symbol, a downward-pointing triangle inside a circle. No words, just the mark. The next well I placed 70 kilometers down at the foothills near Blue Mountain, inside the husk of a grain silo. Cooler temperatures, less exposure, safer collection. 2 barrels, vertical rain catchers, 6 feet high, mounted on a steel rail frame, could be spotted from a drone. I carved a message into the rusted doorframe. Drink from SDIAMS, stick to the mark. That was the second rule of Phase 2. Make obedience instinct. The next upgrade was supply rotation. I had 27 crates of rations stored across 6 scavenged caches, but they were unmarked, unsecured, and too hard to find for civilians on foot, especially in high brush. I repackaged them. Military MREs, civilian canned goods, even squirrel jerky found in hunters' lodges. I vacuum-sealed what I could, then color-coded the outer packs with salvaged dye. Green equals safe to eat. Red equals high salt, emergency only. Yellow equals expired, but edible if boiled. Then I organized placement. No more hoarding at hold points. Instead, I split them across intervals, 3 km between each drop, strapped to painted trees, locked inside coolers hung above the ground by steel cable. The infected couldn't reach them. I drilled holes in the plastic and filled the interiors with mothballs and vinegar-soaked cloth to hide scent. They weren't for comfort. They were for continuity. Phase 2 required message distribution. I didn't speak. I didn't write stories. But I gave instructions. At every corridor turn, every critical decision fork, I left symbols. Never English, never obvious. Squares meant rest points. Triangles meant water. Circles with slashes meant contaminated zones. Arrows showed where and when to move. They weren't art, they weren't hope. They were survival. The survivors didn't question them. One man followed the circle trail and found the silo water collector. He stood under the drum for 15 minutes, didn't drink, just looked up. When he finally took a sip, he dropped to his knees. Not crying, just relieved. He stayed 6 hours. Then he kept walking west. I noted the time. He followed every mark correctly. Phase 2 also meant communication. I didn't mean radios. I meant behavior. Survivors didn't trust each other. Some barely made it out of camps where people were turned into meat, but systems work even when people don't. So I gave them signals. At hold point 2, I installed a chalk wall. On it, I wrote 5 numbers. 1, 3, 5, 7, 0. That was it. They changed every few days. The first man who walked in saw them, hesitated, looked around, then took chalk from the base tray and wrote, "Alive moved west. 2 days ago, no contact." He added a dash below it. Then a week later, another group came. One woman read the board, then wrote, "We saw the man, north of railroad, had a girl, both quiet." Then a third group wrote nothing, but erased the number 7 and replaced it with 6. I made note. They understood the system. No names, no stories, no weakness. Just information. I watched them from a rooftop. One by one they passed through, never fast, never loud. And always moving. The corridor was becoming something new. Not a path. A doctrine. Day 71. I reinforced architecture. Hold point 1 was compromised by weather, strong winds, structural erosion, potential collapse. I reinforced it using shipping container walls bolted to concrete slabs, roof patched with sheet metal. Interior lined with polyethylene foam insulation, made it quieter inside, smell-proof, better for long nights. I installed a narrow crawlspace vent with a sign. "If you can fit, you're safe." It forced them to drop their gear, to think, to earn entry. One man cursed, kicked the door, tried to batter it down. He failed. 3 hours later, the infected found him. I watched through the thermal scope. He didn't make a sound while they tore him apart. But the man behind him waited in the tree line. Didn't move. Didn't interfere. When the infected left, he walked forward, dropped his pack, crawled through. I logged his face in the archive. Next reinforcement, weapon access. I wasn't going to arm idiots. But some would need help. At hold point 4, I mounted an equipment cabinet in a tree 10 feet off the ground. No ladder, just climbing pegs on the trunk. Inside, 1 hammer, 2 blades, 4 nails, a flare. No guns, no ammo. Just tools. I painted 1 sentence on the trunk. "If you can climb, you can fight." They didn't always take it. But someone always tried. That was the point. By day 80, Phase 2 was functional. Corridor passage had tripled. Infractions had dropped. No more campfires, no more talking, no signs of stupidity. I left 3 messages in blood-red paint on slabs near each zone's midpoint. This isn't a shelter. It's a filter. The dead don't rest, neither do you. You are alive, prove it. They didn't clap. They didn't pray. They moved. West. Every survivor who followed the signs without question lived. Every survivor who hesitated died. Day 84. I found a woman with 3 children. She'd taken shelter inside a collapsed church by Zone E. No noise, no fire. She followed the chalkboard, the symbols, the rations perfectly. The children were quiet, disciplined. When I opened the trap door in the rear wall and stepped out behind them, the oldest boy saw me. His eyes widened. He didn't scream. He stood up and saluted. He didn't know why. I gave the mother a water bottle, didn't speak. She stared at my mask, then nodded once. I pointed west. She moved. The children followed without looking back. That night, I returned to the water tower. Added another mark to the side wall. 21. The number of people who passed through the corridor, unbroken, unbent, uninfected. Phase 2 had no end state. Just continuation. One day, they'll call it a miracle. They'll say someone saved the Eastern collapse line. They'll ask how it was done. They'll look for leaders, heroes, martyrs. But it won't matter, because it wasn't about who. It was about what. A structure, built in silence, held by fear, operated with precision, and filtered by one man in a mask. I don't need thanks. I don't need command. I don't need anyone. The corridor survives. Because I do. And I always survive. Chapter 6. Surgical fire on silent soil. Day 85. Corridor function exceeded initial projections. 93 confirmed survivors passed west through the filtered structure. No secondary infection, no internal collapse. Food and water systems stabilized. Communications remained passive and clean. The infected didn't adapt. They never would. The system held. But structure doesn't solve origins. Stability doesn't erase cause. Survival isn't justice. None of this began with chaos. It began with design. Something made this virus. Someone. I wasn't interested in revenge. I was interested in removal. Root, stem, head. The time for containment ended. The corridor had become the spine. I would now use it as a launch platform. Target, infection origin. Objective, full elimination of all surviving creators, distributors, and research personnel involved in patient zero vectors. No negotiations, no interviews, no tribunal. This wasn't a purge. It was surgery. And I was the blade. I started with frequencies. There were old signals buried under static, faint emergency transponder pings leaking from classified channels across the 300 MHz bandwidth. Most were dead. But one was. It pulsed exactly every 47 seconds. Encrypted burst format. Didn't match standard military. I traced the source to a mountainside range near the Maryland border, back edge of the Mihawks Forest Reserve. Coordinates matched a former FEMA-adjacent biohazard research site, codenamed Red Elk, officially decommissioned in 1997. Unofficially, never stopped running. Umbrella would have called it a secondary black site. I called it my next target. Day 87. Prep phase. I loaded for hard breach. No corridor tools, No subtle work. This wasn't population control. This was entry, sweep, annihilation. I took the following. Custom M4S system carbine. Short barrel, forward grip, suppressed. Sidearm, USB match, threaded, 2 full mags. 4 frags. 3 CS gas. 1 thermal charge. 8 flashbangs. 1 machete, black steel. Breacher's hammer. Surveillance drone, hand deployed, 10-minute battery cycle. 1 oxygen split, rebreather. Internal bodycam recording loop, non-transmitting. 48-hour ration pack. I didn't expect resistance. I planned for it anyway. I left the corridor before sunrise. Didn't announce it. Didn't need to. The corridor ran itself now. I moved southwest. It took 3 days to reach the outer perimeter. I avoided roads. Avoided people. Used the old game trails until the static pulse got louder. The signal led me to an old ranger station, one I knew from before, back when everything still had names. The antenna was camouflaged as a lightning rod. I climbed the structure at 100. Clipped a data splitter to the base, ran it through a filter. Under the white noise, synthetic heartbeat pattern, then a voice. Male clipped, no accent. Sample viability reduced. Containment priority green. Proceed to Tier 2 protocols. Intermittent displacement confirmed. Maintain isolation. Do not relocate. Live command. Active order. Not automated. I didn't respond. I traced the origin vector to a deeper recess in the forest. 9 clicks south by southwest. There a buried concrete face, moss covering half the structure, rusted metal doors, coded lock system, 6 air vents across the slope, positioned like a fan pattern. Above it, nothing but forest. Below it, secrets. I watched the entrance for 36 hours. No infected. No wildlife. No patrols. Just a structure waiting to die. Day 91. Infiltration. I entered through the exhaust duct. Used a silent carbide saw to cut the screen, then snaked down 5 meters of heat-shielded shaft. Landed in an equipment room, cold, sterile, lit by emergency power. Signs on the walls. Biozone B3. No entry without B-level access. Decontamination required. Lies. No one decontaminates corpses. I swept the room. First kill, technician, still wearing goggles, not infected, just dead. Gunshot to the back of the skull. Execution style, less than a week old. Second kill, guard post near the server core. Chest cavity blown out, rifle still loaded, never fired a shot. They weren't attacked. They were silenced. I moved deeper. The lab was functional. Servers running, lights dimmed, hallways silent. 10 rooms, 2 open, 1 sealed with biometric lock. I bypassed it with the finger of the dead technician. Inside, storage cold unit, rows of vials, labels worn. 1 clear enough to read. BR0, 54 Gen MK2. Hemorrhagic mutation drift, serum viable. I recognized the format. Umbrella strain derivatives, 3rd generation recombination, plasmid-based, not virus core, meant to spread slow, meant to mutate unpredictably. Not an accident. I took the whole rack and placed a thermal charge under the coolant array. 30-minute timer. Then I moved to the mainframe. The server core was weak. No external encryption, not after the power loss. I accessed the logs. What I found wasn't research. It was orders. Sent from a Black Channel node titled C-Theta 9. 5 key messages, repeated over the last 6 weeks. Transfer viable specimens to safe node Bravo. Phase drift in region 4 confirms release stability. Do not allow non-civilian vectors to escape eastern quadrant. Use patrol units for internal removal. Minimize attention. Reinforce eastern block after corridor compromise. They knew about the corridor. They were watching, or trying to, but they didn't understand it. It wasn't a breach. It was a blade. Now it pointed at their throat. I finished the download. 2 thumb drives. 1 for redundancy. I wiped the rest. Placed a secondary charge in the mainframe housing. Then I found the last room. Door marked, vector origin / clearance delta 1 only. No guards. Just a blood smear on the handle. I entered. 1 survivor. He sat in a chair, IV in his arm, eyes glassy. Mid-40s, shaved head, scar over his cheek, lab coat. He didn't react when I entered. Didn't reach for a weapon. Didn't speak. He just looked at me and whispered, "You made it here. That means we failed." I didn't answer. He raised one hand, like it weighed 100 pounds. "There's no point now. It's already out." I stepped forward. "You're a creator." He nodded, "One of many." No defense. "No, I'd rather die to you than them." I drew the USB. 1 shot to the head. No hesitation. Target eliminated. No conversation. No last words. I'm not here for stories. I'm here to end them. I set the final charge. Exited through the north maintenance hatch. Timed the exit, 27 minutes until full detonation. I reached the ridge in 19. Watched the bunker burn. 4 sequential detonations. Thermal ignition, structural collapse, all internal systems destroyed. Nothing left. No signal. No origin. No architects. Day 92. I returned to the corridor. Nobody noticed I'd been gone. They didn't need to. A man left a drawing on the chalkboard wall. Simple. Crude. It was the mask. My mask. Next to it, a triangle within a circle. Below it, a line of text. Someone's keeping us alive. We don't know who, but he doesn't miss. They didn't get it wrong. I don't miss. Not the shot. Not the target. Not the mission. Origin node, destroyed. Research leads, terminated. Active labs, 0. Specimen stockpiles, confirmed burned. Distribution protocol, collapsed. Command structure, silent. There were others, once. People who made this, people who signed off. They're not above ground anymore. If they exist, they're hiding. But hiding is just delaying the inevitable. This isn't over. Not until they're gone. All of them, Chapter 7, no light left below. Day 93. The fire hadn't cooled in the Mihawk's bunker before the next coordinates surfaced. Not by chance. The encrypted logs I extracted from Red Elk's server core weren't just administrative rot. One of the file blocks, C-Theta-9, held deep trace metadata hidden under 5 layers of storage obfuscation. It looked like random byte noise. It was. I broke it down using a brute looping codec pulled from a defunct umbrella decryption suite I'd stored mentally years ago. It resolved into GPS coordinates, 1 set. West of Chicago, near the edge of DuPage County, an industrial zone. According to the last federal zoning update before total collapse, it had no residential structures, but it had an underground power node, massive, overbuilt, never used. a Cold War relic reactivated by the Department of Energy in 2022, officially designated as a power storage facility. Unofficially, it was built for exactly one thing: continuity of operations. This was it. The final architect node. The ones who didn't die with the rest. The ones who built the storm and survived under it. I didn't send warnings. Didn't alert the corridor. Didn't tell the survivors. This wasn't for them. I prepared for cross-state exfiltration. I was going underground. And when I came back, there'd be no architects left alive. Day 95. Departure, 4:30 hours, heavy overcast, no wind. I reloaded the gear set from Red Elk minus the CS gas. Replaced it with HE shrapnel, less subtle, more honest. I brought a compressed breath rebreather in case of underground toxicity, 4 days of food, 8 liters of water. Route 717 west to I-70 bypass, then south. No interstates, no collapse zones. Took 7 days to clear Indiana. Infection count rising again, nothing structured, just residuals. Drifters. Civilians turned weeks ago. Loose conversion. Slower, dumber, no strategy. But they still blocked paths, still screamed when they saw me. I didn't waste ammo. Only what was necessary. I slit their throats. Burned the corpses. Kept moving. No encounters with live resistance. No militias. The rot had reached deeper than I expected. Most humans were either dead or buried under false havens. That suited me. I wasn't building anymore. I was hunting. Day 105. Approach vector, DuPage ruins. No power. No lights. But the perimeter around the power node was wrong. Clean. Too clean. No overgrowth. No cars. No infected. The rest of the city was choking on bones, but here the asphalt looked swept. Signs of tire compression less than a week old. Tracks from utility carts, not civilian, not looters. Security. I scouted from a storm tunnel for 18 hours. Found no human patrols. But heat sensors were mounted to lampposts. 2 were active, wired, battery-fed. I followed the leads to a power switchyard beneath the main grid. That's where I saw it. A hatch sealed by blast doors, leading 20 meters below the substation. There were 3 cameras mounted around it, all modern, high-end, clean lens housings. And inside, thermal trace. 2 warm bodies. 1 sitting still. 1 pacing. Guards. Which meant they were alive. Which meant they could die. I moved at 2:43. Crawled behind an old Ford Fusion chassis. Triggered a silent decoy burst, a puff of compressed air wired to a reflective thermal blanket. The pacing guard turned. The sitting one stood up, weapon raised. I sprinted. 4 seconds from cover to entry. 2 suppressed rounds, 1 to each skull. Both dropped before they finished breathing. I disabled the cams, took their security fob, didn't open the hatch yet. First, I listened. Used an acoustic dish to pick up vibrations below. There was airflow, pumps, a generator, low hum, non-military, civil grid grade. The facility was alive. Bunker was occupied. I opened the hatch. Descent began. Interior entry shaft dropped 47 feet. Manual ladder. Took me to a first chamber, maintenance level. Bare, concrete walls, yellow stripe markings. 1 red door, 1 vent shaft. I didn't use the door. I cut through the vent. It was narrow, 28 inches. I had to strip down my rig. M4 slung flat on my back, knife in palm. I crawled through 10 meters of metal in silence. When I emerged, I was above the main hall. That's when I saw it. They were still running it, like a command post. 12 personnel, not scientists, not soldiers. Contractors. Suits, business-grade attire, tablet in hand, talking into earpieces. Corporate cleanup teams. Like the ones Umbrella sent before their final collapse. They weren't here to fix anything. They were here to erase it. That confirmed it. This wasn't a last refuge. It was the last throat of the beast. And I was going to crush it. I mapped their pattern for 4 hours. One man stayed seated in the center, older, white hair, hands shaking slightly. The others deferred to him. He didn't speak often, but when he did, they listened. He was the final architect. I didn't need a name, just a position. He operated from a raised control platform, surrounded by glass. I watched as he pulled up digital logs of outbreak vectors. He was tracking survivor movement, not civilians. My corridor. He brought up an image, overhead thermal capture, one of the rest points, water tower. They'd seen the filters, the movement. They knew I'd built something, and they'd already begun mapping ways to counter it. I made my decision. No infiltration. No poisoning. No gas. This needed to be loud, so they'd understand, just before they died, why it was happening. I left the vent, entered through a side access tunnel, undetected, found the main breaker room, shut down internal power. Darkness fell. Emergency lights kicked in. Red glow. Screaming. I kicked open the security door. 3 guards. Dropped all of them in 5 seconds. One tried to radio. I crushed his throat with the hammer. No time for calls. I moved straight through the server bay. Tossed 3 thermal grenades into the cooling core. Fire erupted. The room behind me lit up like phosphorus. No alarms. System was isolated. They couldn't call for help. Not from down here. I reached the command floor. The contractors were trying to run. I didn't let them. I shot out their knees first. Let them crawl. When I reached the platform, the architect hadn't moved. He stood calmly, watching me. "You're the one," he said. No panic, just acceptance. I read your patterns. You built structure out of ruin, fascinating. I raised the M4. He didn't flinch. "You're a ghost," he said. "A failure from a collapsed system. You're acting like you won." I fired. 3 rounds into his chest, 1 into his head. He dropped. Nothing to say. Nothing worth hearing. I planted charges on the mainframe. Took every physical log, every tablet, every data core I could carry. I walked out slow. Fires behind me. Blood on the walls. No survivors. Day 113. I returned to the corridor. The survivors were asleep. The chalk wall had changed. Someone had drawn another triangle within a circle. Under it. He's still out there. We are too. They weren't wrong. But this wasn't over. It never would be. Chapter 8. Structure without democracy. Day 114. The architects were dead. No command structure remained. They had no failsafes, no successor states, no retaliatory command bursts. The bunker beneath DuPage had functioned as a black-site executive node, final control center, final oversight, and I killed it with a suppressed M4 and a breacher's hammer. The virus was still alive. The infected still wandered, but without control, without direction, they were noise, a system without interface. That left one structure standing. Mine. The corridor. It had begun as a vector path, a survival filter, a transit route for disciplined survivors built with the same rules umbrella instilled in us. No mercy, no weakness, no second chances. Those who obeyed lived. Those who hesitated died. But it wasn't a passage anymore. It was a perimeter. I wasn't running an evacuation corridor. I was running a perimeter defense grid with logistics and morale nodes, tactical redundancy, and a fully functioning psychological control layer. Phase 3 initiated. Colonization protocol. Objective, long-term survival. Tactic, full environmental and human control. Method, militarized order. Leadership, me. There would be no elections. No councils. No free zones. Only function. Only rule. Only permanence. Day 115. I re-entered the corridor at Zone A. There were 12 survivors moving westward at that time. I didn't speak. I didn't approach. I watched them from the tree line, checked their packs, their foot discipline, their silence. 9 passed without pause. 3 lagged. 2 were carrying the third, an injured male. I stepped onto the road and blocked them with a raised hand. "Drop him," I said. They froze. "His leg's broken," one of them said. "He's slowing you down. He can still move. He won't survive, and if he dies in your arms, you'll all be contaminated." The man with the broken leg looked up. "Please." I stared at him. "I'm not asking." They dropped him. He didn't scream. I pointed to the ditch line. "Sit, wait." The others hesitated. I stared them down. They moved on. I gave the wounded man a bottle of water and 2 iodine tablets. Then I left him. A test. He would survive if he adapted. He would die if he waited for rescue. This is how civilization begins. With obedience. Day 117. Command Post 1, established at Zone C. I converted the observation platform into a formal staging area. 3 layers. Tier 1, weapon storage, ration rotation, water testing. Tier 2, recon scope, corridor telemetry, footfall tracking. Tier 3, leadership. That meant me. I mounted a chalkboard on the rear wall. On it, the corridor code, rewritten. 1, no talking after dusk. 2, no fire. 3, follow the marks. 4, obey instructions. 5, if someone is infected, eliminate them. 6, leave your name behind. 7, no heroes, no martyrs, just survivors. Underneath, I wrote 1 line. This is not a democracy. This is a perimeter. People read it. They didn't erase it. By day 120, I had 25 consistent survivors circulating between zones. 6 men, 12 women, 7 children, 3 elders. I memorized their routes, their faces, their behavior. I began assignment. Not roles. Ownership. I marked the lumber yard from day 1 as post, Alpha. There I found 4 males working together to boil water. One had carpentry experience. The other used to fix tractors. I told them, "This is now a supply depot. You will maintain the water barrels, the ration crates, and defend the site. You will carry weapons and shoot without hesitation. You will report every infraction." One man asked, "Report to who?" "To me." He didn't ask again. I left him a revolver with 3 rounds. This isn't to protect yourself. It's to protect the depot. Use it correctly. Then I left. That was the rule. I didn't hover. I didn't babysit. I gave instructions. They executed. Or they died. Day 123. I found 2 survivors building an illegal fire near hold point 2. They de-stacked chairs, made a camp circle, opened a can of peaches. I shot the fire out. 1 round. It hissed and died. They scrambled. One grabbed a knife. I shot the knife out of his hand. Then I approached. Fires attract infected, I said. It's in the rules. The woman nodded. We didn't see a sign here. I pointed at the tree above them, a circle with a slash painted red. That's the sign. They looked at each other. I disassembled the fire, poured salt from their ration pack into the soil. You stay in the corridor, you obey. There are no exceptions. There is no safety without discipline. We're sorry. I didn't nod. I didn't forgive. I just walked away. 2 days later, they were gone. I found their bodies near Zone F. Bitten, torn apart. They hadn't followed the path markers. I wrote a new sign over the tree where they burned the fire. Disobedience equals infection. It didn't need to be poetic. Just true. Day 130. I formalized the corridor structure. It now had 3 sectors. Alpha Zone, storage, crafting, water purification, tool maintenance. Beta Zone, staging and rotation for movement west, recovery beds, quiet shelters, no children allowed. Gamma Zone, final checkpoint before exit, includes wildlife tracking, food gathering, and defensive perimeter. Each survivor who passed between zones was tagged with a red cloth armband, scraps from old jackets, shirts, whatever they could carry. I didn't explain them. The survivors made up their own reasons. Some said it meant you were trusted. Some thought it marked you for death. Both were correct. Armbands weren't permission. They were accountability. If someone broke the rules, I removed the armband. If they broke them twice, I removed the person. Day 135. First internal conflict. 2 men fought over a knife near post, Alpha. One cut the other's cheek, no deep injury. They were already bound when I arrived. They didn't speak. One had the blade tied to his wrist with wire. I took it, examined it. Homemade sharpened rebar, wrapped hilt. Who made it? I asked. The younger man raised his hand. Why? For protection. From who? He didn't answer. I raised the knife, then drove it into the ground between his feet. From now on, you'll protect others. Post, Alpha is your duty. You report anyone who breaks ration order. You rotate water drums. You walk the fence 3 times a day. He nodded. The older man asked, and me. I looked at him. You're done. Then I walked him to the perimeter and told him to leave. He didn't argue. He walked east. Never returned. Colonization doesn't mean comfort. It means permanence. I didn't allow gardens, too exposed. Didn't allow trade, too chaotic. But I allowed construction. I showed them how to build sandbag walls, how to reinforce doors with bar stock, how to clean water filters with ash and cloth, how to move silently even with 2 kids in tow. They learned fast. Not because I was patient, because I punished failure. One woman tried to hoard a peanut butter jar. I took her food away for 2 days. She didn't eat. She didn't complain. She gave it back. Day 140. New message added to chalk wall. We're stronger than we were. The rules hurt, but they work. No one signed it. Didn't need to. I left it there. I walked the corridor every 3rd day. Checked every post. Never announced myself. Sometimes I helped carry water. Sometimes I watched. Sometimes I shot an infected 40 meters down the trail with one clean shot to remind everyone what failure looked like. I didn't ask for thanks. No one gave it. But food packs were left at my rest post. Knives sharpened. Gear cleaned. Quiet gestures. That's how you build loyalty. Not with speeches. With silence, structure, and steel. Day 145. Final directive added to the corridor code. He built it, we hold it, together. I didn't write it, but I let it stay. Because it was true. This wasn't a camp anymore. It was a base. A structure. A perimeter. A future, Chapter 9. One man, one city, one outcome. Day 146. Glenville was still burning. The largest infected cluster east of the Mississippi, population before the fall, 47,000. Reports, old, second-hand, unstable, placed the original breach in the main hospital. Patient 0 walked in with a cough, walked out a week later as 22 bodies. No response, no lockdown. Within 6 days, it was a feeding pit. It became a hive. And it remained one. Long after the military abandoned it. Long after the last FEMA chopper took off without civilians. Long after other towns collapsed from inside. Glenville never got cleaned. I was going to change that. Not with a team. Not with the corridor. Not with explosives, napalm, or command. Just me. And my process. I left from post, Alpha at 300, no announcement. 2 survivors saw me pack the M4 and reload the machete. One asked, "You going east?" I didn't answer. He stepped back without another word. The corridor didn't question anymore. They just cleared the path. By day 148, I was 10 kilometers from Glenville city limits. The outskirts had decayed into farmland gone wild, crops no longer planted, silos split open by weather and age, every fence post splintered, every barn repurposed as a feeding ground, scorch marks near each of them. Government tried airstrikes, failed. I spent the next 12 hours establishing a fallback position. Old radio tower, 4 legs, 40 meters high, still standing. I climbed it, stripped down 2 antenna mounts, rewired the anchor panel into a satellite reflector dish, laser-etched a mark into the metal with my breacher's torch. No return, no follow, no sound. Then I left my corridor radio tied to the highest point, wrapped in wax-sealed plastic. If I didn't come back, they'd know why. Then they'd know not to come. I entered Glenville alone. No escort, no recon. Mask sealed, suit reinforced, packs light. M4 with suppressor and 3 full mags. Sidearm with 2. 2 blades, steel hatchet, full tang combat knife. 6 flashbangs. 1 flare. 0 hesitation. This wasn't an assault. This was cleansing. Block 1. The first infected was waiting on the porch of an old barber shop. Male, mid-40s, face torn at the cheek, jaw slack, tongue dragging on the sidewalk, wearing a raincoat and mismatched shoes. He moved slow. No groan, no scream. I shot him clean through the eye at 30 meters. Didn't break stride. Moved through 3 homes, cleared each room. Found signs of feeding in the kitchen, teeth marks in flour bags, blood over cereal boxes, empty cans arranged into a spiral. Human hands had done that. Old superstition, infected cult behavior. Didn't matter. I cleared it with fire. Used a handheld fuel canister and a burn pack. The whole house went up in 6 minutes. I moved to the next. Block 2. 19 infected. I lured them out with a bait can, a smashed grocery cart filled with bike bells, rigged to a proximity wire. The sound pulled them into a blind corner between a pharmacy and a laundromat. I used the breecher's hammer and the M4. Shot the first 5 through the knees. Let them scream, it drew the rest. Then I used the hammer, skull after skull. 2 hours later, the alley was silent. I dragged their corpses into the laundromat and sealed it with plastic. Then I burned it. Everything. No recycling. No trophies. No evidence. Block 3. I moved through the civic district. Old flags flapped on cracked poles. The courthouse rotunda had bodies nailed to the door, crucified, infected, long since dried out, not moving, message left by survivors or degenerates. I didn't care. I dropped each body, cut the hands off, burned them in the lobby with half a box of printer paper and old case files. I cleared the holding cells. 3 turned infected inside, locked in steel, rotten beyond utility, couldn't even stand. I shot them all in the head. 1 bullet each. I etched another symbol into the front steps. Circle. Triangle. Crossed lines. Nothing mystical. Just statistical. That block was now clear. Block 4 was the school district. Gymnasium converted into a hatching ground. I counted 37, infected inside. All curled together, bundled into a heap of bones and skin, hive-nesting behavior. They pulsed together, one mass. I watched them breathe. They weren't sleeping. They were waiting. I dropped a charge into the bleacher rafters, tied to a propane tank. I didn't wait for them to notice me. I blew it from outside. The whole structure came down. No screams. No survivors. Just fire. Block 5 through 8 were slow sweeps. Row homes. Gas stations. 1 firehouse still upright. Infected inside, war gear, turned responders. Heavy, slow, built like oxen. I took them out with the machete. Too close for guns. Too tight for hesitation. 1 nearly caught my mask in a fall. Didn't panic. Pivoted. Used the full weight of my back to slam its skull into a fire axe bracket. It didn't get up. I didn't leave it intact. Day 150. I reached City Hall. The hive was centered here. I saw them clustering across the lawn. Hundreds, maybe more, standing in place, not moving, all turned toward the building. Every door sealed with trash, bones, furniture. The infected had done it. Something was inside. They were protecting it. Or feeding off it. Either way, it ended tonight. I climbed to the top of a transit bus, raised the M4, and started shooting. Headshots only. Every shot echoed through the city. They moved toward me like a tide. I drew them in. Used every mag. Switched to sidearm, then blade. They swarmed the bus. I climbed the roof rail and leapt to a traffic light pole. Hung there until the infected filled the space below. Then I dropped the flare into their center. They looked up. Saw nothing. Until the propane canister I planted 20 minutes ago went off. Fire washed the crowd clean. The lawn was ash. But more came. I moved. I reached the rear of City Hall by jumping over a toppled scaffolding line. Broke through the east maintenance door with 3 hammer strikes. The inside was worse. Rotted walls. Melted electronics. Bones stacked like sandbags. The infected had learned how to barricade. Not intelligent. Instinctive. But efficient. I stepped over them. Room by room. Clearing. Never stopping. never speaking. Nothing lived. By 200, I reached the central chamber, old council hall. That's where I found it. 6 infected, still breathing. Hooked to IV lines, military grade. Behind them, a man in a lab coat, half his chest missing, eyes open. Clutching a data pad. He tried to control them. Tame them. Make them docile. Turn them into a weapon. It failed. But he didn't turn. Because he dosed himself, masked the infection, froze the virus. Died on his terms. Coward. I stepped over him. One by one, I shot the infected through their skulls. Then I burned the council hall. From inside. Walked out through smoke and ash. Glenville was silent. No screams. No echoes. No movement. I walked block by block. Cleared every door. Every cellar. Every alley. And when I was sure no infected moved, when even the flies stopped buzzing, I stood at the city limit. Spray painted one sentence on the road. No more hives. Then I walked away. Back to the corridor. Back to the world I built. No one needed to ask what happened. They saw the smoke for 3 days. They knew. One man. One city. One outcome. Chapter 10. Expansion through fire and salt. Day 151. Glenville was ash. Not smoldering, not infected, not broken. Dead. No drift clusters left in its center, no feeders in its outskirts. I watched the last corpse burn through a scope from the ridgeline I used on approach. 2 lungs collapsed, one scream half formed, then quiet. The wind carried nothing but soot. It was sterilized. Exactly as I intended. But a perimeter means nothing without pressure. Stability demands expansion. The corridor was permanent now, hardened, populated, following the code. But the line had to push outward or collapse inward. This wasn't a haven, it was a vector, and every system demands flow. Next target, Ohio. Data from the DuPage black site, extracted before I torched the bunker, listed 5 former experimental bleed zones, tagged by internal field operatives. Only 2 matched verified outbreak signatures. One was already consumed by fire, Glenville. The second was across the Ohio River, marked as Zone QX7. Cincinnati. It was redacted on the map. But the path was. I traced the bridge coordinates, scouted the terrain, calculated infection drift times, local wind vectors, elevation hazards, survivor probability, and fallout range. Then I began the push. Corridor westward expansion protocol initiated. Phase 1, reconnaissance, clearance, and corridor spine construction through Pennsylvania's southwest. Alone. As always. Day 152. I returned to post, Alpha with Glenville still black across the sky behind me. They watched me walk back in, silent. One survivor stepped aside without being told. Another dropped a full ration pack near the fire barrel. I didn't speak. I climbed the watchtower, opened the corridor logbook, wrote one line in black chalk across the spine wall. Glenville is clear. Then, beneath it, we move west. Day 153. First corridor scout runs south of Pittsburgh. Outskirts quiet. Infection density negligible. Collapse long past. Survivors were either dug in or gone. I followed an old freight line west, using mile markers as breadcrumb data points. Every 20 kilometers, I made a new mark. Circle clear. Triangle equals hold point. X equals unusable. Arrow equals continue. I laid down paint cans every 5 kilometers, hung white cloth markers from trees, and cut directional arrows into metal signposts using a combat file. This was the spine. Everything else would branch from it later. Day 155. Found a survivor group. 4 bodies alive. 2 women, 1 man, 1 child, traveling northeast, wrong direction. I stopped them at a ridge checkpoint. They raised their hands before I said anything. "We're not infected," one woman said. "We're just trying to find a clean town." "There are no towns," I replied. The man stepped forward. "You're the one who set up the corridor." "Correct." He swallowed. "We didn't mean to leave it. We just heard the city was cleared." It was. The child stared at me. I scanned them for wounds, heat signatures stable, breath controlled, no dilation in pupils. "Clean. You'll help build the next line," I said. They looked at each other. "Build. You'll dig fire pits, mark trees, stack perimeter rock, move water barrels, no exceptions, no rest until it's done." The man said, "We're not soldiers." "You are now." He didn't speak again. I handed them chalk and rations, assigned them to a ridgeline post. Then I moved forward alone. Day 157. First infected spotted west of Wheeling. 1 lone crawler in a ditch. Arm missing, no scream, just dragging itself toward the sound of my boots. I knelt and split its skull with the hatchet. No wasted ammo. Checked its body. No signs of mutation, no lesion growths, just standard deterioration. But the infection was still active. Confirmed, bleed zone in effect. I marked the area red. Set a burn trap using 2 propane tanks and an inverted tripwire. Cleared the overpass. Took a 6-hour break under a collapsed billboard. Watched birds circle. No other movement. Zone stable. Day 158. Reached the Ohio River. Bridge was down. Not from collapse. Deliberate. Explosives from below. Center supports blown inward. Steel curled like melted rebar. I ran a climb and drop recon from the riverbank. Found survivor etchings on an old train car, half submerged in silt. We made it west. They didn't follow. Car was empty, blood on the roof. They lied. They'd been pulled out, probably screaming. I didn't record their names. They weren't part of the structure. I continued. Used an old shipping yard crane to rappel across the gap. Landed on the Ohio side at 2100. Still no sound. Too quiet. Not natural. That meant clusters. Hive behavior. I moved immediately. Day 159. Cincinnati perimeter established as primary hazard zone. I scouted 7 kilometers in all directions. No moving vehicles, no burning structures. But there were piles. I counted 36 in total, body mounds wrapped in tarps, stacked in rows. All infected. None burned. Someone had tried to control them. Failed. I tagged the city limits with 5 symbols. Then began setting up the expansion spine. I didn't bring teams. I brought structure. Mapped every usable road with white paint and scavenged street reflectors. Set ration crates in tree hollows with heat-blocking foil. Wrote new rules at every checkpoint. No fire past here. No speech past dusk. No entry without mask. No weapons drawn without cause. Obey the corridor. This wasn't a colony. It was an armory. A sharpened finger pressing west into the ribcage of the old world. Day 163. A man followed me into the city. I heard him 2 kilometers out. His boots were too loud. He didn't carry his pack right. It dragged. He called out, "Hey, you wait." I turned. He stopped. I saw the signs, the marks. They say you're still moving west. I am. You going to set up another corridor? No, I'm going to plant a knife into the heart of this one, so it doesn't bleed again. He nodded. I want to help. I stared at him. Why? My family's dead. All I had was waiting. I'd rather work. I tossed him chalk. Then follow the marks. If you break one, I'll know. If you quit, I'll find you. If you live through this, you'll get to carry a gun. He caught the chalk. Didn't speak again. He followed. I didn't turn to check. Day 166. Infected swarm confirmed in Cincinnati Civic Center. They weren't active, but they were dense. Over 500, unmoving. Hive behavior again. Same as Glenville. But no central building this time. Instead, the city had been zoned into quadrants. Each quadrant had a marker, trash stacked in rings, each ring burned around the outside. That meant organization. Not human. Not intelligent. But pattern-based. This hive had adapted. Bigger. Heavier. Slower. Smarter in the way fire learns to burn up instead of sideways. I didn't rush in. I set traps at every main intersection. Used my last 2 thermite charges to collapse the main library roof. 30 infected inside. All dead in seconds. Each block I took, I marked with sulfur and ash. Each street I cleared, I painted with one line. No drift, no cluster, no return. Day 168. I returned to the corridor spine. Brought the man with me. He was bruised, bloodied, half-starved. But he hadn't run. I gave him a water bottle and a piece of chalk. "Congratulations," I said. "You're part of the corridor now." He looked at me. "What do I do?" "You train the next one." He nodded once. No salute. No words. He just turned and waited. Exactly right. I sat on the roof of a ruined courthouse that night. M4 beside me, mask off. Air stank of rot, but it didn't matter. Cincinnati was infected. But not forever. The new corridor would reach it within 2 weeks. The structure would hold. Because I held it. And because I was still moving. Chapter 11, The Fortress in Ash. Day 169. I'd gone as far west as the corridor could hold. Cincinnati wasn't clear, it wasn't safe, but it was stabilized, its movement tracked, its spine secured, its edge hardened. That was enough. I left behind 2 new enforcers. The man who followed me from the ridge and another I tested inside a gas station holdout. They didn't speak much. They followed orders. They'd last. I gave them the armbands. I didn't stay to see if they earned them. Because structure needs a center. And I had burned one for it. Glenville. The city I sterilized by hand. It was time to return east. Time to build more than kill zones and rules. Time to turn the ruins into a command post. Into a fortress. Into the capital of discipline. No flags, no nations, no sanctuaries. Just corridors spreading like veins. And a brain behind the pulse. I didn't walk back. I marched. Day 172. Post Alpha, Corridor East. They saw me return before I reached the perimeter. No alarms, no sounds. They just stood up straighter. One woman saluted, without instruction. 2 men stopped arguing and started checking supplies. I didn't ask questions. I passed them, climbed the northern ridge tower, and raised the chalkboard. Wrote one line. West secure, orders return. Underneath, I etched a triangle inside a circle. That wasn't a symbol anymore. It was policy. Day 173. I entered Glenville again. But this time, I didn't come to burn. I came to build. I surveyed the cleared blocks, measured line of sight between rooftops, checked angles for bottleneck defense, scouted rooftops with intact elevation, found 4 solid positions across what had once been the downtown civic loop. I walked the perimeter twice, drew the outer ring in red chalk across street signs, gas station columns, and the bark of dead trees. I spoke aloud once. This is the zone. Then I got to work. Phase 1, Fortification. I selected the old courthouse as the central command site. Structural integrity intact, reinforced doors, subterranean storage, line of sight on 3 approaches. I posted 2 sentry mannequins on the roof, helmets, scopes mounted to decoy rifles, human shapes under plastic ponchos. At distance, they would look like guards. From within, there would be real ones. In time, I set tripwire zones at every exterior entry street. Non-lethal. Noise makers only. Gas canisters rattling in steel drums, hung 10 feet overhead, tensioned by rigged pulleys and bent nails. Anyone approaching would announce themselves by accident. Infected or not. Phase 2, Suppression Layer. I reopened the old gas station 4 blocks west of the courthouse. It still had a steel basement, likely used for fuel storage. I converted it into an armory. Installed 2 locking hatches. Laid down 7 rifles, 9 pistols, 500 rounds in boxes, and 14 blades, knives, axes, hatchets, cleavers. All cleaned. All oiled. I marked the wall with the corridor symbol. Then wrote 1 sentence. Break only if we're breaking. The rules weren't to be broken unless the system was. Not before. Phase 3, Power and Signal. Generators were scavenged from a mining depot west of the city, diesel-fed, single-stroke, heavy, slow. I installed 2 on the roof of the courthouse, mounted to shock-absorbing braces built from the wreckage of 6 sedans. They wouldn't run all the time. Just long enough to charge the solar banks I mounted to the upper windows. Power wasn't constant, but it would keep. Signal came next. I installed 2 dish reflectors, 1 for shortwave, 1 for internal zone comms. All they could do was bounce orders, loop directives, and receive confirmation pings. I didn't need to broadcast speeches. Just 1 signal. Over and over. Glenville operational, fortified, orders held, approach corridor only, obey structure, enter clean, die quiet. That loop would run forever. Or until someone shut it down. No one would. Phase 4, Labor. I returned to post, Alpha. Picked 15 survivors. Not chosen for strength. Chosen for consistency. The ones who followed the rules. The ones who obeyed the signs. The ones who understood silence. I brought them to Glenville, 1 truckload at a time. Didn't let them speak on the road. Didn't explain the destination. Just handed them tools and pointed to tasks. Barrel stacking, sandbag lining, gate welding, window boarding. When one woman asked, "What is this place now?" I said, "Command." And nothing else. She nodded and kept working. 2 days later, we had a triple-gated entry point into the southern street. 3-meter walk-in corridor, funnel choke, high ground on both sides. A kill zone. Exactly how I wanted it. Day 178. I instituted the rotation doctrine. Every survivor returning to Glenville had to serve 5 days on work detail. No exception. No rank. No excuses. They'd clean water drums, stack filters, check trap lines, reset warning bells. When their time was up, they could request reassignment to corridors. Not before. One man said, but I've been with you since Zone C. I said, that's why I know you'll do it right. He did. Without another word. Day 180. I wrote the doctrine on the main chalk wall of the courthouse. Not in fancy terms. Not with mythos. Just rule. Corridor Fortress Protocol, Giellian Vieli Code. Work or leave. Follow the mark. No infection, no excuse. Speak less, act fast. Training is survival. Your place is earned, not given. We do not retreat. Orders are not debated. When one fails, two replace. He watches, always. I signed it with a triangle in a circle. No name. My name didn't matter. The code did. I didn't make announcements, but the survivors began calling it the fortress. Some whispered, Old Glenville, the city that lived after it died. One boy painted a red stripe across the South Road and wrote, Step over only if you're ready to obey. I left it untouched. Not poetic, but precise. Day 182. First training rotation began. I selected 10 men and women to run patrols. Silent ones. No yelling, no guns. Just the sweeps. Every block between City Hall and the old hospital. 3-man squads, daylight only. Their job was not to fight. Their job was to see. To find any redrifted, infected. To find breaks in structure. To find chaos. They found 2 infected. Crawlers inside a parking garage. They didn't panic. They lured them into the open, then cut them down. One with an axe, one with a cinder block. They cleaned the blood themselves. Didn't ask for praise. I gave them a knife each and marked their arms with the symbol. Not as reward. As confirmation. They had earned it. Day 185. First true command was issued from Glenville. A corridor unit in Zone D reported smoke west of the boundary. Rogue survivor band, not infected, not permitted. 5 untagged bodies. I gave the order, approach, warn once, then silence. They did. 3 ran. 2 fought. 1 patrol member broke his leg in the melee. But they completed the task. Brought the tags back, burned the bodies. I gave the injured man a clean cot, a shotgun, and 3 days' rest. He asked me, is this a government now? No, I said. This is a system. Government fails, system doesn't. He didn't ask again. Day 190. Glenville Fortress had power, water, training, rotation, food storage, corridor access, and defense. It was not a city. It was not a refuge. It was an operation center. A place where order was born. Where the line never moved backward. Where rules outlived noise. And above the main doors, one survivor etched the corridor code. Painted it in red against the old courthouse stone. Structure without democracy, without fear, without end. I didn't write it, but I sealed it in plastic. Permanent, Chapter 12, Southward Through the Smoke. Day 191. The fortress held. Glenville wasn't fragile anymore. It was fireproofed, roof reinforced, guarded, watched. Every street was logged by code. Every patrol moved on schedule. Every survivor knew their station, their zone, and their fallback route. The system worked without hesitation, which meant I didn't have to stay. Corridor control doesn't come from proximity, it comes from enforcement, and enforcement only works if the structure spreads. So I moved south. Not toward survivors, not toward aid requests, toward reports of mutation. Unconfirmed chatter out of the Appalachians, deep ridges in Kentucky, pockets of infected behaving erratically, changing faster, turning sooner, clustering in strange formations, moving uphill in bad weather. No official reports, no data transmission, just old corridor scouts whispering back from southern routes. We pushed west. Now the pressure built from below. If infection patterns were shifting, it had to be stopped before it got teeth. I didn't wait for consensus. Day 192. I left Glenville through the East Ridge access path. Nobody tried to stop me. They just watched me go, silent. 3 children stood at the gate, holding chalk. One of them had painted a triangle on his shirt. That was enough. I turned, headed south. Day 193. Into the Appalachian line. First 60 kilometers, clear. Pine forests, dead cabins, frost, no sound. No infected drifted here. It was too remote. Roads washed out, nothing to follow, no light, no noise. But there was one thing. Bones. Stacked on porches. Folded into chimneys. Pushed into closets. I found 13 bodies in one house. None infected, all shot in the head, all clean kills. Someone had tried to quarantine themselves and failed. Their hands were bound. Not suicide. Execution. Means someone tried to stop the infection with bullets. Failed. Left no guards behind. That was the first sign. Day 194. Found movement. 2 infected in the woods. Naked, covered in moss. Wet, both male, both eyes missing.